Hello again. I'm back with another video. This one is going to be a series review for a series that I have really loved. It's one of the, it wasn't the first one that I read that really kind of got me back into reading. This one, it took me a little bit of time. The first time I read the first chapter and actually DNF'd it for like 3 or 4 months. And then one day I was super pregnant and super tired and just was looking for something to read, and so I picked this one back up, and I couldn't stop, and I took an entire weekend and just read the whole thing. So figured this one would be a lot of fun. Anyways, yeah, so let's hop right in. I'm actually going to be reviewing the Rowan finished series by Robin Mahle and Elle Madison. I'll add a little picture right here. But this series, it's on Kindle Unlimited, and it's so good. So just a little bit of a background on this one. I'm gonna break it down to just like some background on it, things I liked, things that maybe I didn't like so much. I'm going to try really hard to keep this spoiler free. So if you're thinking about wanting to read this book, if you're kind of just trying to get more information, hopefully this is good. If you've already read the series, we can still talk about things that we liked and didn't like without spoiling it for others. But just a little bit of background on the story. So it follows a young princess named Rowan. She finds herself in a sticky situation. She was trying to smuggle vodka from a neighboring country into her own, and she got caught smuggling. So she, at the very, very beginning of the book, she is held captive in an enemy land in this neighboring country, and she's kind of at their mercy to see what they do. So it's got a very interesting premise that obviously gets into a lot more from there. It's a 4-book series, and it does exist within a bigger universe. So there's a series that follows her mom that takes place years prior. It follows her mom, Charlotte, I believe is the name. And then there's another series that follows her cousin, Davin. All of these series are finished, by the way, so there's no unfinished. I think the book, or the series that follows her mom, is 4 books long. The series that follows her cousin, Davin, is 2 books long. It's a duology. Both of these series are referenced, I think, timeline-wise. Obviously, the book that Charlotte, the series that follows her mom, takes place prior, and so it is referenced quite a bit in this series. I personally have never, I still have yet to read that series, actually. It's on my TBR, which is about 5 miles long at this point. But Charlotte takes place before. It's referenced, and you can tell that it's referenced, but you don't need to read it in order to enjoy this series. The duology that follows her cousin, I believe, takes place afterwards. And I have read that one, and partially because I kind of knew who the character was, and so when I saw that there was a duology following him, I was very intrigued. So that's kind of how it goes universe-wise. I think they're even coming out with, yeah, anyway, so that's kind of where we're at. Let's hop into things that I really liked about this series, and then we'll hop into things that maybe I think weren't my favorite. Things that I liked. The first thing that comes to mind, I feel like all of the characters are very 3-dimensional. They have good character growth, and there's multiple characters throughout the series that kind of feel this way. Like you're seeing the development go along, and it feels very natural. Like as you get to know people more and more, they're going to grow, or you're going to feel more and more depth with them. And I feel like that's just kind of how their characters are. Even with side characters, even with people who aren't necessarily a huge part of the plot, like you feel very connected with them, and they feel very authentic and feel very real. Especially I feel this way about the main characters, both of them, the male and the female main character. They start out and you just want to like shake them a little bit, because you're like, what are you doing, and it feels authentic to the character, but you see them learn and grow throughout, and I love watching that relationship develop. And so that was really good. Another thing that I really liked was that it's a really good standalone series. You don't have to read Charlotte in order to enjoy the Rowan, or the Lochlann Feuds is technically what this is called. I guess I should explain that. In Kindle Unlimited, the cover, it says Rowan on it, but it's the Lochlann Feuds series. Charlotte, that follows her mom, it's the Lochlann Treaty series. And then the series that follows Davin, I believe, is called the Lochlann Deception. So those are the three. It's a good standalone series. The other thing, I just feel like the quality of writing, it just feels like it's on another level. I know, so I've had Kindle Unlimited for a couple years now, and I feel like it's worth having because there's some really good independent authors that I found on there that I wouldn't have found anywhere else. But sometimes I feel like there are just some books that lack a little bit of that editing behind it. And so you're reading it and you're like coming across typos, or you're coming across very simple, fixable things. These books, I have never once experienced that feeling of just like, this feels rushed, or this feels incomplete almost. It's very well put together. The quality of the writing is really good. Like, they write for each of the characters very well. Like, the writing from the male character is very different than the writing for the female character, type of a thing. So I felt very connected to each of the characters, and I could genuinely understand where they were coming from, which it's really hard to do, to put someone like truly in their shoes, I guess. It was really, really easy to get lost in the world. I legitimately, the first time I read this book, because I've read this series multiple times, it's kind of like my comfort series at this point. The first time I read it, I legitimately could not put the book down because I had to know what would happen next. And it's not necessarily like the highest, like, it's not the most action-packed series out there, but I could not put the book down because I had to know what happened, which was really fun. Another thing that I really liked, it just made me genuinely smile and laugh and giggle at times, just watching these two characters get closer and closer, or just funny moments that would happen. I was legitimately just giggling, and it was just so fun to experience. And when they finally get together, I was just like, like, I'm pretty sure I let that noise come out at some point. I was so happy. I also feel, I think kind of not the biggest thing, one of the last things that I want to mention of things that I really enjoyed about this series is I feel like the ending was really well thought out. Sometimes they feel a little rushed, or you can tell that maybe the writers have backed themselves into a corner and they just got to get out of it now because they've got to end the series. I feel like this was a very well thought out ending. Things finalized really well. You could tell everything wrapped up very nicely. Things didn't feel rushed or patched together in any way. And so the themes were present all the way throughout, and they felt very well represented there towards the end. Yeah, so those are kind of the biggest things that I experienced with this, and I would love to hear your thoughts, things that you guys liked if you've already read the book, things like that. Okay, hopping into things that I didn't like. The characters are young, and I'm not 18 anymore, and so whenever I see books that have the main characters that are like 18, 19, 20, or 21 even, I kind of just mentally age them up. To give the authors credit and to give the story credit, I think they genuinely help, how do I say this? The character is 18, and she definitely acts 18 at times, but that's part of the character growth, is recognizing that is, there's a little bit of aging up to do, and there's a little bit of growing up that needs to happen. And so I think that's kind of part of it, but I just mentally aged up all the characters like 5 years. So in my head, she's like 23 and still needs to grow up, I do that with a lot of books, so not necessarily just this one. Something else that was kind of hard for me, at times, they're writing in certain accents for these characters, and it was kind of hard for me to imagine at times, and if there was anything that pulled me out of the world, it was trying to imagine how to say these words in my head. And so sometimes that took me out of the book. And I know that's kind of a more of a personal preference thing. I don't think that's something that everyone would have a problem with. I think that was just something that kind of pulled me out of the world. And I kind of touched on this already, but the main character in the book was 18, or she's 18, and there were times when I just wanted to shake her and like, what are you doing? Like, this is not a smart move, and you know it, and you're doing it anyway. And that's kind of the charm of the book, though. I wouldn't say that's necessarily a bad thing. I think it was part of getting you into that world of, this is where she's at, this is the growth she has to go through. So sometimes it was frustrating, but I think I was supposed to feel that way at times. So I don't know. I've seen some people kind of talk about this. This series is technically a fantasy, or a romantic fantasy, or a romantasy. I don't actually know which one of the three it is, or if there's even a difference. But anyways, there is fantasy elements in this book. And it's not very prevalent in the story for a long time. And it's not the overarching part of the story. I feel like the story is more character-based than like fantasy-based. And so some people kind of complain about that they wish that there was a little bit more of that fantastical element to it. I personally didn't really have a problem with that. I really enjoyed the balance that there was, and it felt, again, very genuine, very authentic. I felt like I could genuinely put myself in the world and where they were taking us. So I feel like that's kind of my biggest thoughts on Rowan, or the Lochlann Feuds series. I believe the 4 books that are in it, you have Scarlet Princess, Tarnished Crown, Crimson Kingdom, and the Obsidian Throne, I believe, are the 4 books within that series. I loved them all. I think that books 2 and 3 were my favorite if I had to pick. And then book 4, and then book 1 was actually my least favorite. I got through book 1. Did I say book 1? Book 1 was my least favorite. I got through book 1, liked it, and then I got into books 2, 3, and 4 and realized I couldn't stop. And so that's kind of where I'm at. Yeah, if you guys have read this before, please leave a comment down below. Let's talk about it. I would love to hear your thoughts on this series. Any sort of interaction that you do with this video helps a ton for the algorithm to know that my videos are worth watching and worth making. So if you could like, comment, follow, turn on notifications, whatever you want to do, please, I would love to chat. I would love to get to know you. Anyways, I will talk to you later. Thank you.